MTI. So thank you all for joining us today. Once again, excited to see so many of you here. For those of you who are hearing this a third time, I apologize, but I'm Michael Margolis. I'm the administrative manager down here in the Portland office for SCORE. I do a lot of the behind the scenes, but sometimes I stop by to facilitate some workshops, which is what's going on today. And I'm here with Tom from Maine Technology Institute. And we just want to thank you for joining SCORE today and all of us for our webinar with MTI about grants and programs for your business. SCORE is a resource partner of the SBA, and we help clients in all stages of the business cycle, all the way from startup and the ideation phase through exit, maybe even selling your business. And like I said earlier, we'll get to your questions when we can. So please put them in the Q&A box. You can find that at the bottom of your Zoom window. It's a little chat bubble, and we will get to them. And then I think without further ado, Tom, please take it away.
Well, great. Thanks so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I've done a few of these at this point, and it's always great to see the great turnout. And we've had a number of different companies come through to MTI as a result of these webinars. So hopefully this will be a useful presentation to everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Is that showing up, Michael?
Sorry, Tom, what was that?
Just wanted to confirm that's showing up okay for you all.
Yes, yeah, you're showing up. We do have the notes view of your slides, but if that's okay with you, then you should be good to go.
Let me see if I can get it open, not in notes view. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, of course. No, I had some wrangling with PowerPoint yesterday for a for a webinar.
How about now?
Yes, perfect.
Excellent, great. So for those who aren't familiar, MTI, Maine Technology Institute, we are a nonprofit. We're primarily funded through the state of Maine, and we have a very close relationship with the state. And our mission is really to support innovation in the state and support businesses engaged in innovation, entrepreneurs engaged in innovation, with the hope of growing Maine's economy by enabling businesses to take risks, to scale their innovation, and in turn, hopefully that will lead to positive economic growth in the state. And our end goal is really to make a more prosperous, a more equitable Maine economy through supporting and funding innovation. So just a little bit about the history of MTI. So we were founded in 1999 by the legislature at the time, and really because Maine was lagging behind most of the rest of the country when it came to supporting innovation and supporting research and development. And the legislature and the governor at the time thought that it was really important that that Maine invest in supporting innovation. So they formed MTI as well as our sister organization, the Maine Venture Fund at that time. Since then, we've put out over $300 million in funding to thousands and thousands of Maine businesses for a variety of different projects. So it's been really amazing to see businesses grow with us, to see some of the economic outcomes that have come from that. And so we're looking forward to the next decade and see a lot of potential to keep growing Maine's economy. So in terms of the scope of MTI funding, it's important to note that we really work with businesses kind of all across their growth trajectory. So we work with businesses who are just at the ideation stage, who maybe have an idea and have done some research to validate that idea. And by research, I mean things like market research, customer discovery, but might be even pre-prototype before having a minimum viable product. So you have an idea, you have validation behind the idea that there's a need in the market, but you're still very early stage, all the way up to companies that are sustainable, that have been in business for years, and are looking to continue to grow their innovation and scale. So we work with kind of businesses across this spectrum. So in terms of key requirements, so in terms of kind of another way to think of this is fit to MTI, the key things that we look for in terms of what sorts of businesses we're seeking to work with are shared goals. And by that, it's really shared desire to positively impact Maine's economy by growing in the state, by scaling the business, and by creating economic impact here. And I'll go in a little more depth as to what this means. Innovative and forward thinking. So that really ties into that innovation component, that MTI is really designed specifically to work with businesses who have an innovation, who are doing something that's novel, distinct, differentiated from what's already out there, and who are seeking to grow that innovation. Maine-based organizations, so that's really, is the organization predominantly based in Maine? And I'll go into this in a little more depth too, because that's an area we often have questions on. 7 targeted technology sectors. So when we were founded by the state, they tasked us with supporting 7 technology sectors in the state of Maine that were deemed to be high growth and have the potential to really transform Maine's economy. And I'll go into those as well. And then access to matching funds. And likewise, I'll speak on that. So the first of those requirements, economic impact potential, which we also think of as shared goals. So this is really the idea that MTI is looking to work with businesses that are seeking to grow in the state and create an economic impact here. So one key metric we look at is the creation or retention of quality jobs. So is the business seeking to bring on well-paid positions that will have a positive benefit to the state? Growth and acceleration of revenues. So, is the business seeking to grow, accelerate their revenues, and that in turn will have some positive tax benefits for the state and some other forms of economic benefit. And then attraction and leveraging of additional capital or other investment. So does the business have the potential to bring investment into the state through growing and attracting investors? Maine-based organizations. So this is often an area that folks have a lot of questions. So I'll spend a little time talking about this. So registered Maine business, that just means that the business is registered with the state of Maine to do business in the state. That's just something you could fill out online with the Maine Secretary of State, Bureau of Corporations. And the business must be predominantly Maine-based. We use the word predominantly because, as you all know, a lot of businesses, especially in today's economy, are not based in a singular location. And especially with the increase of remote work as a result of the pandemic, we frequently work with companies who have some of their employees based in Maine and some of their employees based elsewhere. And that's okay. But we're looking for the business to be more based in Maine than anywhere else. So, if it's a business that's based in Maine, headquartered in Maine, but has employees in other states or even other countries, that's acceptable. However, if the business is headquartered in California and has a lot of employees in Maine, that might not be a fit. So some of the things we look at to kind of determine whether a business is predominantly Maine-based include, is there a physical headquarters in Maine? Whether key decision makers for the organization are based in Maine. And by key decision makers, we mean kind of either founders or folks who would kind of comprise the C-suite of the business. So, the chief executive, chief operating officer, CTO, so on. And the ratio of full-time employees in Maine to employees in other locations. So if 75% of your employees are based in Maine and 25% are based elsewhere, that's okay. But if 75% are based elsewhere and only 25% are based in Maine, that might not qualify you. And this is very much something that you can talk through with MTI. Every business is a little different, but we're just looking to ensure that Maine funding, because it's coming from Maine taxpayers, is going back to Maine-based businesses. And then lastly, or plans in progress towards establishing a predominant presence in Maine. So sometimes we'll have businesses reach out to MTI who are looking to relocate to the state because they're excited about the opportunity to do business here in the state. We can often work with them and even invite them to submit an application for funding, but that funding is generally contingent on them demonstrating that they have relocated to Maine. So that money won't actually go out the door until they're able to demonstrate that they are Maine-based. So innovation. So this is really the key thing along with the Maine-based economic impact potential in terms of fit to MTI. So does the organization have an innovation that has the potential to scale and is meaningfully differentiated from existing alternatives in the market? So meaningfully differentiated, we're looking for businesses that are doing something that's substantially differentiated in a way that gives them a competitive advantage. So you've discovered something new or different in terms of a product, in terms of a service, in terms of a way of doing business that gives you an advantage when you're going up against competitors and allows you to grow your business. And some of the ways we like to see differentiation demonstrated is through customer discovery. So you've gone out and spoken with potential customers and identified that you have a solution to a problem that they're experiencing that's not being adequately met at the moment. That you've done market research. And I include within market research both exploring the market opportunity, but also exploring the competitive landscape. So who are the competitors that are already out there in the market, and how is what you're doing different from what they're doing? and then a review of existing IP, so intellectual property. So making sure that you're not constrained by somebody else's patents or something of that nature. 7 targeted technology sectors. So these are the 7 technology sectors for MTI. You'll see they're biotech, composites and advanced materials, environmental technology, forest products and agriculture, information technology, marine technology and aquaculture, and precision manufacturing. One thing to highlight here, you'll see at the top, it says organization or innovation in one of the following sectors. And the reason there's an or there is sometimes an organization will identify as being in one sector. So let's say an organization considers itself part of the creative economy, or maybe they're part of food tech, or maybe they're in the hospitality or tourism industry. Those aren't sectors that MTI specifically works with. However, if the innovation itself, for example, maybe you're in the hospitality sector, but you've created a platform, and that platform has the potential to really profoundly impact your business and your business's ability to grow and scale and be competitive. That might make you eligible under the information technology space as a platform, even though your business itself might not be considered in one of these sectors. So that's just important to note because it's often an area that we get questions. And so we try to take a very inclusive view of sectors. But really the key thing again is that question of innovation. Are you doing something innovative and distinct? And if you are, we can often find a fit within one of those 7 sectors. And then lastly, access to matching funds. So MTI requires a matching investment equal to or greater than the amount of MTI funding requested. So a simple way to think of this is if you're coming to MTI and you're seeking $20,000 of MTI funding, we're looking for you to demonstrate that you have at least $20,000 of matching funds. And MTI funding is intended to go towards a project. So another way to think of it is if you have a project in mind that's going to cost $40,000 to help move an innovation forward, MTI could put in up to half of that, so $20,000. And then the other half of that funding would need to come from the business. That funding can be in the form of investment from the founders, existing revenue if your business is already generating revenue, outside investors, a bank loan, credit line or credit cards. We're fairly agnostic as to the source of matching funds. It can be from another grant, from another source. It just can't be from another Maine-based entity like the Maine Venture Fund that's putting in money. There's very few examples like that, but there's a few Maine-based entities that basically are also using state money that we're not allowed to count as match. But that's something you can discuss with an MTI representative if you have questions in that area. And then you'll also see that we are able to accept a portion of the match as sweat equity. We call that in-kind match. And basically the idea behind that is, so we're required by the state of Maine to match for any funding that we put out the door, but we're able to accept a portion of that match as sweat equity. So the labor of the founding team, if they're doing it unpaid, towards the project. So if you're working on a project and it's going to take you, 100 hours of your time and you're not receiving any compensation for that, we can look at the market value of the labor that you're doing and count that as part of the match. Generally, this should be no more than 30% of the request. So if you're seeking $10,000 from MTI, generally would still be seeking at least $7,000 or so in cash match, and then $3,000 or so could be in the form of sweat equity. And I'm happy to answer any questions on that later on. So MTI funding scales with you and with your business. So you'll see down at the bottom, so MTI has different forms of funding available. We offer grants, loans, and equity investments. Generally, when a business comes to MTI for the first time, we work with them on grant funding. The idea being that for the business, that's great because there's no expectation of repayment. And for MTI, it's a great way to build a relationship with a business before possibly moving on to loans and an equity investment. Folks might ask, why not just do grant funding exclusively? And the reason is we have a cumulative lifetime grant limit for a business of $100,000 in grant funding. So once you've maxed out at $100,000 of grant funding, we don't put out any more grants, but we are able to continue to work with your business if you're in need of capital through loans and equity. In terms of equity, generally MTI would be the top off on a fundraising round. So if your business is going out and seeking investors, MTI might be able to contribute, but we wouldn't necessarily go in alone. We're looking to go in as part of a group of investors. But as you can see here, so MTI funding scales with you. So the idea is really that there are multiple opportunities to come to MTI for funding, and the amount of MTI funding your business is eligible for is based on how far along you are in these 6 different distinct areas. So economic impact potential, team ability, innovation and value proposition, customer and market, business and organization model, and scope of work and budget. So often if you're a very early stage business, you might be falling here in this range 1 category, which is $0 to $25,000 in funding. You might apply to MTI for a grant, receive that grant, accomplish the goals of the project you proposed to MTI. And if that was successful, come back to MTI and apply for another range of funding, maybe this range 2 of funding for another $25,000. And then hopefully that project is successful and you can come back and apply for follow-on funding. So the idea is really that there's an option for businesses to work with MTI as they grow and continue to come back and tap into grant funding as you scale, and then eventually into loans and equity. MTI funding is project specific. So anything that MTI funds, regardless of whether it's a grant or loan or equity, we're looking for a business to identify a project that's going to help them move their innovation forward. And so all applicants must submit a project proposal with the following elements. 1 or more key activities describing the scope of the project. And examples of key activities can include product development, or working towards getting a prototype or an MVP, or if you have a prototype or an MVP, continuing to add features and enhance the product. Sales and marketing efforts are a common activity. Additional customer discovery, additional market research, IP protection, etc. And you're welcome to include within a project multiple key activities. So it's common for folks to say, well, one of our activities is product development, and another activity is based around IP protection. And these are all activities we need to keep moving innovation forward. And so we'd like to put them together. And that's okay. You don't need to have a single nature of the project. It can be multiple components that are kind of built together. Clear, specific, and measurable deliverables for each activity. So by this, we mean we want to be able at the end of the project to look back and say, was this key activity accomplished? And kind of be able to say, check, yes, it was, or no, it wasn't, and if not, why? And so having clear, specific, and measurable deliverables is a good way for us to gauge both at the start of the project, what are the goals, and at the end of the project, were these goals accomplished? And your investment officer, your MTI representative, can work with you to identify what those deliverables might be. Estimated timeline, start and end date for each key activity. So when do you anticipate starting and when do you anticipate ending? MTI definitely understands that within the course of a project, these dates might evolve. So they're kind of best guess, but MTI is not going to penalize you if those dates shift a bit during the project as new information comes to light. And then lastly, a description of anticipated expenses and the source of matching funds. So what are the expenses that are associated with the project? How do they link to the project itself? And then what is the source of matching funds? And again, I touched on that, but where are you getting funds to match the MTI request from? So in terms of the application process, so the first step is to submit an interest form via MTI's website. If you go onto MTI's website, you'll see a Get Started link. And if you click that, there's a short form to fill out. And that basically gets you in touch with an MTI representative who will then follow up, reach out to schedule a call and to talk through whether or not you're eligible for MTI support. And they'll talk about a lot of the things I've already covered so far in this presentation. So what sort of project are you seeking? Where is your business and its kind of growth trajectory? Who are the key team members? What is the innovation? What's the economic impact potential? What's the business model, et cetera? If through that conversation, it's determined that your business is a good fit and it makes sense to apply, then you can submit a funding request with the following documents. So the scope of work, which is really just describing what is the project that you're seeking support on. The budget form, which is again describing what are those expenses and what are the sources of matching funds. And then an application document, which describes the economic impact, team, innovation, market, and business model. And MTI has templates for each of these 3 documents, as well as a guidance document that your investment officer can share with you to help you start completing that process. Once you and your investment officer, your MTI representative, have worked together to get the application package ready, you'll upload it to MTI's portal and then await an MTI funding decision. We say that this process can take between 1 to 4 months. Generally, it's around 2 months. Sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter, but 2 months is generally a good rule of thumb. One thing I should mention there, and this is another common question we receive, is you're welcome to get started on the project while you're awaiting the MTI funding decision. You don't have to await MTI's decision to get started on the project. But just you have to move forward with the project knowing that the MTI funding decision may be yes and may be no, and you have to be comfortable with that risk if you're going to get started on the project. I should also mention, so you're welcome to get started on the project, but that's after meeting with an MTI representative. So MTI is not able to fund past expenses or things that were incurred before speaking to MTI. But basically, once you speak to MTI, if you want to get started on the project, you can in that kind of 2-month window where you're waiting to get a decision. And then lastly, if approved, ongoing reporting requirements as detailed in funding contracts. So this is a little vague here simply because the reporting requirements differ depending on what sort of MTI award you get. If you get a grant awarded, generally the only reporting requirement is a final report at the end of the project detailing how the project went and how much you spent on it, the key outcomes of the project. And then also for any MTI funding decision, we also ask you for the next 5 years, we'll send you an anonymous annual survey, just asking you to detail, how many employees do you have, what's your revenue, and that's a way for us to track our impact potential over a 5-year span. If you get a loan or an equity investment from MTI, our reporting requirements are a little more, I guess, intensive in terms of we ask you to submit a quarterly report every quarter detailing how the business is going, how the project is going. But that's something that your investment officer would work with you on to make sure you understand the reporting requirements. So this is my last slide, which is when is a good time to contact MTI? So when is a good time to put in that interest form inquiry via our website? And we used to call it an intake. I should update this. It's now going to be called an interest form, but it's really just an inquiry to MTI asking us to set up a time to speak with you. So kind of the key things that MTI is looking at in terms of, and questions you should be able to answer when speaking to an MTI representative include, what is the problem you are addressing? And supporting evidence. So why is this a problem? What evidence do you have to support it's a problem? And it shouldn't just be that you have experienced it yourself, though that's a great start, but it also should be you're able to demonstrate that other folks have experienced it as well, and that it's a pervasive enough problem that there's an opportunity in terms of solving it. Your innovation and how it is differentiated from existing options. So again, that's speaking to what are you doing and why is it innovative and why is it distinct from what's already out there? And how does that differentiation give you an advantage when you're going into the market? Customer discovery that you have conducted to date. So customer discovery is really the idea of have you gone out and spoken with potential customers? That can be through interviews, that can be through sending out surveys, that can be just informal conversations. But ideally, that discovery is taking place with not just friends and family, but you're talking to strangers and folks who aren't incentivized to tell you what you want to hear, but are looking to tell you their truthful perspective on your idea and what you're seeking to do. They're a team with complementary skill sets. So MTI generally prefers to provide funding to teams that have at least 2 folks as part of them. That can be 2 founders, or that can be a founder and another key employee. Oh, excuse me. Or that can be, maybe it's a single founder, but they have a really strong team of mentors and advisors who are helping them move the business forward. But generally, we look to not just see sole founders who are out there on their own for a couple of reasons. One is that entrepreneurship is a really challenging journey. And we found that folks who have resources and other people to lean on and other people who are kind of in the trenches with them are often more successful. And also because we like to see complementary skill sets. So no one person, is going to be perfect to grow business on their own. We like to see, a diverse team that has different skill sets and different perspectives they bring to the table. Competitive landscape and market opportunity. So that's the idea of, who is out there? What are the major competitors or alternatives to what you're looking to do? And then also market opportunities. So, how do you know that the market is large enough that you can actually grow as a business? And what sort of data do you have to support that? And then lastly, the resources you will need to move the innovation forward. So that's both in the context of what are you asking for from MTI in terms of the specific project, but also what do you need as a business to keep moving forward and growing? Um, and that's all I have. So I hope there's some great questions. I hope that was helpful. And yeah, happy to take any questions folks might have.
All right, thank
I
you,
see,
Tom. Oh, sorry, go
and
for it.
well, I see one question in the question and answer section, which I'll go ahead and answer. Does
Yeah.
any MTI prime funding receive count in the 100,000 grant limit? That's an excellent question, and the answer is no. So for folks who aren't aware, MTI, as part of the American Rescue Plan Act, the federal government gave Maine a large pool of funding to distribute to businesses who might have been adversely impacted by COVID. The state of Maine asked MTI to distribute a portion of that funding, and we did so through a variety of different programs. Prime is the name of one of the programs that we administered. Another one's called the Forest Recovery Initiative. There's another one focused on seaweed and aquaculture. Any money that came from those various programs that are related to the American Rescue Plan Act, that money does not count towards a cap. So it wouldn't count towards your 100,000 cap. The only funding that counts towards that 100,000 grant cap is money that's what we consider core funding, which is kind of the regular funding that MTI puts out, rather than these kind of one-off programs. Could you please specify the types of manufacturing that would fall under MTI funding? I would say generally pretty much any type of manufacturing. From a sector perspective, can be eligible for MTI funding. The specific language we have is precision manufacturing. And then we also, composite materials is another sector. But in my experience, generally, if you're able to demonstrate that your business has an innovation, so if you're able to demonstrate that you're in the manufacturing space and you're doing something that's innovative, ideally involving technology and distinct, then what type of manufacturing you're doing might be less relevant. And again, it's always good to speak with an MTI representative to really talk it through. I see that you're asking, would pottery qualify for manufacturing? Potentially. There's a lot of different components that go into it. I mean, generally, MTI is looking to work with technology. So I guess it depends on what the nature of the innovation is and how you're creating that pottery and whether or not it's possible that if you've have an innovation that allows you to create a lot more pottery at speed or something of that nature, that could be a fit. But again, my recommendation would be to just go ahead and submit an intake request via our website, and you'll be able to sit down and talk to somebody, and they can really talk through whether or not that's potentially a fit, because there's a variety of nuances to it, I suppose. Can a nonprofit organization apply for an MTI grant? That's another great question. So there's a couple components to that. So one is, MTI has a separate program, which I didn't mention, and I apologize for that we call our ecosystem support funding. And that's really funding that's intended for organizations in the ecosystem who have a similar mission to MTI. So an example would be if you're a nonprofit and you're running an accelerator or an incubator program or a workforce development program, and you're able to really clearly demonstrate how it helps MTI's overall mission of growing those 7 technology sectors, creating economic impact, spurring innovation in the state of Maine, you could apply for that ecosystem funding request. But that's really specific to organizations who are looking to grow Maine's innovation economy and can demonstrate how they're doing so. The other option is if you're a nonprofit, but you have an innovation and you're kind of applying almost a social entrepreneurship model, or you're gonna bring in additional revenue as a result of the innovation, and that's going to allow your organization to grow and create economic impact. That could also be a fit just for the core funding that I described. However, if you're a nonprofit that's primarily funded through grants and philanthropy and donations, that might be a trickier case to make because it's harder to draw that line between MTI supporting the innovation and your organization growing and creating that economic impact. But again, there's no hard and fast rule saying a nonprofit can't apply, but you just have to be able to demonstrate that you meet all the other criteria. How would a Delaware registered but Maine located company be treated for qualification for funding? That's totally fine that you're Delaware registered. It's very common for Maine-based businesses to be, domiciled in Delaware, registered in Delaware. And so we wouldn't necessarily penalize you for that, as long as, again, you're able to demonstrate, A, that you're registered with the Secretary of State to do business in the state of Maine, and the fact that you're a Delaware, technically Delaware registered, will not stop you from being registered with the state of Maine. And then you also have to demonstrate that even though you're, registered in Delaware, that your business is predominantly based in Maine. In terms of creating jobs or adding employees, what if the project drives increased revenue for other related businesses and brings them significant increased business? Is this type of revenue growth looked at similar to adding jobs? Another excellent question. Yeah, that's one of the economic impact areas. So I mentioned a few of the key economic impact areas, but certainly MTI kind of takes a holistic look at economic impact. Generally, employee growth within the company is probably the strongest argument, but definitely MTI looks at what sort of economic impact is a business's growth going to have on other businesses in its area. So if you're able to demonstrate that you're going to have partners or suppliers or customers who benefit from the growth of your business, that's definitely a component to economic impact that would weigh positively in your favor in terms of an in terms of an application MTI, is being able to demonstrate that you're supporting other Maine-based businesses through your own business's growth. Great presentation. I'm in construction and development, heavily leaning on technology and blockchain. Can I be considered an environmental? I think it really depends a lot on the nature of the business. It's hard to say just with that much information whether or not you'd be eligible. But if you're working in blockchain, there's often some innovation in that area. So it definitely potentially be one of our sectors. So again, I just encourage you to kind of submit an intake request via MTI. Our company designs and builds marine joystick control systems here in Maine, and until now, it has been just my husband and me. We've installed systems in the US and many other countries. We're developing a new product line and want to grow. This seems like something that could really help us. Great. Yeah. I mean, again, if you're able to demonstrate that, there's potential for scaling and you're doing something innovative, I'd certainly encourage you to reach out via the website. What percentage of grant applicants are successful in receiving funding? I don't have the hard number there. What I will say is, so as I said in the process, the first thing to do is to reach out to MTI via our website and set up a meeting with an MTI representative. The MTI representative is going to work really hard to make sure that if you're submitting an application to MTI, that you're going to have a good chance of being successful. The goal is we don't want to make you put through all the work of putting together an application and wait for months at a time and then just find out that you're not eligible. So generally, I would say a significant majority of MTI applicants, by the time they're actually submitting a grant request, are likely to receive funding. It's not all of them, but it's a sizable proportion are yes once you submit the application. With that said, I would say, probably 50% of the people we talk to are not actually eligible for MTI funding, but we try to establish that fairly early on in the conversation, so it's not a huge lift on your part. So again, that's really where the kind of the conversation with an MTI representative is useful, because it allows you to really talk through your questions, talk through exactly what you're doing, what your innovation is, what your business is doing, and try to get to a pretty clear answer as to whether or not you might be eligible for MTI funding. I see a question in the chat. Can we use MTI for adding technology to our food truck that will help promote our brand to create more jobs and promote a Maine-made product? That's unfortunately probably wouldn't meet the innovation criteria. It would depend on the nature of the technology. Generally, MTI funding can't be used just to buy an existing technology. Generally, that wouldn't meet the innovation requirement. We're more looking to support new technology or research and development of new technology. But again, that's one of those ones where there'd be a few nuances there. Also, it also depends on beyond just the innovation component, which is an important one, it's also the economic impact potential. So are you looking to, create a fleet of food trucks and so on? So there's a number of issues with that one, but again, please feel free to reach out and speak with an MTI representative just to get a sense of whether or not you might be a fit. Those are all the questions I see for now, but I'll wait a moment in case some other folks have questions.
Yeah, these have been great so far, everybody. Please keep them coming. We are technically booked here until 2 o'clock, so don't be shy. Questions that you ask may end up helping somebody else who doesn't ask a question. So don't be shy.
I'll put my contact in the chat in case anybody wants to reach out. Again, my recommendation is just to go to our website, but if anybody has a very particular question, I probably will recommend if you email me to go to the website, but if you have a very specific question that I'm able to answer via email, I certainly will.
Well, looks like we had a couple more pop in here. One from Riken and one from Heidi, if you want to take a look at those.
Yes, would machinery be included as technology? It definitely could be. I mean, we've worked with a number of companies who have developed, new distinct technology that, if you're in the manufacturing space and you create a piece of machinery that allows you to manufacture a lot quicker or more efficiently or cheaper, that could certainly be eligible from a technology standpoint. It would really depend on the nature of the machinery and what it allows you to do. Does MTI look for gaps in the technology opportunity that we have here in Maine and look for ways to fund and fill that gap? Yes, is the short answer. So we have a couple answers to that. So and we're looking to do that more. That's a really great question. So we have 7 sectors, as I've mentioned, and within each of those sectors, we have 7 what we call technology boards. So those are experts from within these sectors who kind of sit on a board and advise MTI as to kind of the ongoing issues and trends within those sectors. And we often will try to run specific opportunities related to needs within those sectors. So for example, I think about a year ago, we ran a specific grant funding program focused on clean tech. So technologies that are looking to address the climate crisis and provide resources for businesses that are kind of engaged in clean tech. So we do that. And I don't know any specific programs coming down the pike immediately, but I'm sure that we'll have some more coming down the line. What if I just have an idea for an innovative fabric? Again, I would need more details, but if it's a fabric that is differentiated from what's already out there and gives you a competitive advantage, and you're able to demonstrate a real business opportunity to grow the business as a result of having this innovation, then that definitely could potentially be a fit. So I need more details. But I would certainly just point you to MTI's website and submitting an intake request there to speak with someone. Does MTI work with Oceanic Network offshore wind projects for New England? I certainly believe that MTI has funded some businesses in the offshore wind space or who are engaged in wind generally. Off the top of my head, I don't know specifically which businesses those are, but certainly, again, if you're a business, environmental technology is one of our sectors. So if you're a business who's engaged in wind power and are able to show that you're doing something distinct and innovative, then that definitely could be a potential fit to MTI. So so on MTI's website, we have a list of past awardees. It's currently a little out of date. I think the last time it was updated is 2021, but we're looking to get it updated in the next couple of weeks, actually, all the way through the end of fiscal year 2023. So all the way through September of last year. So that information will include the name of the company, how much money they received, what program they received funding through. That's about the extent of the information we're allowed to share, but you can get a sense via that. Yep. How unique does an innovation need to be? For example, if my pursuit is something that has been done before but is new to my geographic area, would that qualify? Thank you. That's a great question, and that actually is one of the areas that we really the question of bringing in a new technology that's new to Maine or maybe even new to the United States, but exists elsewhere is a really interesting question, and one that can be a little complex. I would say generally, if you're bringing in a technology from elsewhere, part of the innovation might be how you implement it. If you're implementing it in a new, distinct way here in Maine, that gives you a competitive advantage. Um, if there's a lot of work that needs to be done to customize it to make it work here in the state, that could potentially be a fit. Um, it also links to economic impact potential. So how potentially transformative is it to bring that technology here to Maine? And that brings me to a bigger point, which is the interplay between innovation and economic impact potential is a really interesting one. In that we need both, but if the economic impact potential is massive, it's possible that we're able to be a little more flexible on the innovation question. Whereas if the economic impact potential is quite small, then we probably need to remain pretty strong on the innovation question. But there always does need to be an innovation, and there always need to be an economic impact potential. But if you're looking to bring in a technology from somewhere outside of the United States, or even potentially from the West Coast or something like that, it potentially could be eligible. And again, I'm sorry, I feel like a broken record, but I would just encourage you to submit an intake request via MTI's website just to chat with someone. And I know a few folks have asked whether or not this presentation will be sent out, and it sounds like it will be.
Yes.
So if folks want to go back and refer to this, please feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. I will be sending out the recording and the slides, and I'll also include Tom's email as well on that within the next 24 hours. And we just
Great.
had a question rolling from Michelle as well. Do you
Yes.
have application deadlines or is funding ongoing?
That's another great question. We do not. We have rolling deadlines. So we did used to have application deadlines, but we found it's a lot. It's just better for everyone to have these rolling deadlines. Partly because we want to make sure that folks aren't feeling rushed to get their application in by a deadline. We really want you to have time to think. And put together an application that you feel good about and you feel is strong, and not feel like you're rushing to meet a deadline. And it's also helpful on MTI's end because it means that we can kind of process applications as they come in, and we're not hit by a barrage of applications all at once. So yes, the answer is we have a rolling deadline. You can submit whenever you're ready to. There's no hard deadline. If we receive funding from receiving the co-working development funded program from the Office of Business Development, count against funding from MTI, can it be used for matching funding? I'm not generally, I don't know enough about that program to answer that clearly. It depends really as to whether or not that's state funding or federal funding. So some programs that are administered by the Department of Economic and Community Development, which even though it's a state agency, they're actually deploying federal funding. That would be eligible as a match potentially. So I see from Daryl, he said, I believe it's federal funding for the COVID funds. So that potentially could be funding then that matches MTI funding. Again, you need to be able to demonstrate that you're using it towards the MTI proposed project. But yeah, federal funding can definitely count as a match towards MTI funding. So I meet in person with a consultant in a local MTI center. The short answer is, and by consultant, I imagine you mean MTI representative. Probably yes. I guess it partly depends as where you're based. So MTI, our headquarters are in Brunswick, but since COVID, we've actually gone fully remote, which is nice in the sense that we now have employees scattered across a lot of the state. I believe our farthest north employee is in the Orono area. So, but depending on who you get assigned to as an MTI representative, I'm in the Portland area, and I'll often try to go and get coffee with somebody, if I'm assigned to somebody in the greater Portland area. And so generally we can try to make it work. It's a little tricky if you're very far north. We're looking to bring on somebody in Fort Kent area. But generally, yes, MTI representatives would be happy to try to meet in person. And we often, I should also mention, we often can also meet just at the Brunswick headquarters, which we still have. It's not staffed very highly. So it's definitely, you'd want to schedule that in advance. It's not a walk-in scenario. You wouldn't want to just walk in just because there might not be anybody available to assist.
Any more questions, folks? Please keep them coming if you do have them. These have been great so far. Okay. I will take that as a question exhaustion sign. Um, if you do have questions as well, after this that we didn't get to that kind of come to you after the fact, again, I'll be sending out Tom's email and with the recording and the slides, and it is in the chat as well if you'd like to grab it from there. But I will pop back here and say hello so you guys can see me again. Thanks for coming, everybody. This has been really well attended, and we really appreciate your time today. Um, as I said, I'll be sending out a recording and a copy of the slides to everybody within the next 24 hours. And you'll also be receiving kind of a brief survey from us just about this webinar and how it went. We really appreciate your feedback as it helps us continue to bring stuff to you guys that is helpful and improve upon things that are not so helpful. So we'd love it if you fill that out. And just as a reminder, we here at SCORE offer confidential and free one-on-one mentoring, no matter kind of what stage of the business cycle you're in, or if you're a solo entrepreneur. Don't hesitate to reach out. You can go to score.org. There'll be a button on that front page. It says Find a Mentor. Click that, and you'll be off to the races there. We are a nonprofit partner of the SBA. We've got 240 chapters around the country, and 3 of them are here in Maine. And we are happy to say we've helped over 11 million entrepreneurs since 1964. We have to give a huge thanks to MTI for partnering with us again on this one, and Tom as well. You always do a great job on this, and so love facilitating these. And thanks for your time, and we hope to see all you guys again in the future.
Hey, everyone. Great to be here.
Take care, folks.